While Tiffany gets set up, we're going to go ahead and get started. I want to thank you all for coming this morning. We're here to see Brandon Witmer in his final presentation. Brandon will be a student teaching at Conneaut Area Senior High School under the direction of Ms. Laura Metrick. He's going to have 30 minutes to address 3 questions that you see around the board. Who he aspires to be as a teacher, how he's going to maximize his internship, and what he's done along the way on his journey to get ready for this student teaching internship. Again, he'll have 30 minutes to do that. We will then have a 15-minute Q&A session where we will have you guys as an audience, the teacher education panel, and as well as the audience on Zoom. If they have any questions, we'll engage with Mr. Witmer there. With us today, again, the teacher ed team, I'm Dr. Kevin Curry, this is Dr. John Ewing, Dr. Daniel Foster. We have Ms. Beth Bathy and Mr. John Seaman, our programs masters in the back, and our doctoral candidate, Ms. Tiffany Morey. She'll be fielding all of the online presence. Brandon, before you get started, I would love for you to introduce not only yourself, but the loved ones that you have with you here today.
Cool.
You'll have the floor.
Alrighty, great.
Don't wait on me, you go.
Oh, okay. So, I want to introduce my parents that came with me today. So my mother, Nancy Witmer, and then my father, Brian Witmer, and then some of my friends from Wildlife. I just want to thank everyone for coming today. Greatly appreciate it. It means the world that you guys support what I've done in my journey, and I can't wait to demonstrate how my Penn State career has prepared me to be a teacher. So a little bit about my story. So I started at Penn State in wildlife. I received an associate degree in wildlife technology from Penn State Du Bois. And when I started college, I had no intentions of going into ag ed. In fact, I didn't even really know what agriculture education was. So through that, I started Penn State with a different career path, and it's been really cool to see how that has transpired into where I'm at today. And through that, I've done all kinds of cool different experiences in wildlife, and then not only that, but through ag ed, a lot of different things in professional development that have taught me what really ag ed is. And it's super cool, and I love it, and love natural resources, and I'm so happy to be in this profession. So when you're looking at a classroom, I think one of the big key points in your classroom is building that foundation as into how you manage your classroom, and building that foundation as in what your classroom management is, your expectations, your procedures, and just kind of all the basic steps into how a student feels when they walk in your classroom every single day. And I think if you build that foundation on day one, it's key to just overall having good classroom development. And I've made management posters. So I'm not going to pick them up, you guys can see them. So classroom procedures, or maybe, no, they cannot. So I saw you peering over there, and we're good. So classroom procedures, so basically what my expectations are that when you walk into class every day, and what you're going to do when you walk in and sit down in that seat and go through that. And then my expectations for students in the classroom, again, like I said earlier, what students are expected of, how they're expected to be those lifelong learners in the classroom, and we're going to learn together, and it's going to be a process. And it's okay not to know everything, because we're going to go step by step and learn together, and having that expectation and realizing that it's expected of them to have that mindset. And then classroom consequences, obviously ideally we would never have to use them, but they're here, and they're here to establish that this is a place of learning and not a place this is a professional place. And having these classroom consequences are important for establishing that on day one, and not establishing this later on in the semester once they have their routine. So those are some of my classroom management and consequences and expectations on how I'm going to build the foundation in my classroom during my student teaching. So my model program curriculum. So if I were to start a program tomorrow, this is how I would structure it. I think every class should have an SAE component. So for those of you who don't know what that is, it's a supervised agricultural experience. And that's a project that students can work on and learn more about maybe what their interests are, or try something new and do a project that they don't know about. And then through that, I believe that you can enter into this model anywhere in the stage. So I don't see that the scope and sequence that you have to take this class each year and move through the whole program. I think you should be able to go into what classes you're interested in. And some of those classes that would be interested in would be like agricultural science. So, ideally you would start in this class, but, that class is going to be designed that you can connect local agriculture and global agriculture, make those connections and see how there's differences and similarities, and then make that connection and get students interested in just that whole industry of agriculture. Agriculture and the environment. So I think as an agricultural industry, one of the key points is that we're moving to sustainability, and sustainable agriculture is so key in what the consumers want today, and establishing that in the classroom and introducing that, I think is a really important and key topic. So bringing that to the classroom, having that as its own course, I think is really important. Natural resources, because again, I love natural resources, and I think that's a really important part for agricultural education and just development. So having those classes and whatnot. Horticulture, so having a greenhouse in your program, so not only teaching the students about just the whole science of a greenhouse and horticulture and agronomy and everything, but teaching those kids responsibility and the management and all the parts that go into managing a greenhouse. I think bringing that into the classroom is really important. And at TASH, we have a greenhouse, and I can't wait to utilize that more and more and see how that works firsthand this this coming spring. So my next two classes are animal science and ag mech. So I do not have an animal science background, but just because I don't have that background and don't have that content knowledge doesn't mean I should deprive students from having that opportunity to take it. So I would introduce those classes with the mindset of we're going to learn together. So bringing animal science and ag mech into a classroom and giving those students opportunities to learn like that, I think is really key and important. Like I said earlier, SAE, so every student will be required to do an SAE, and will have to do their own project, and will be encouraged that every year they'll switch the project and try to diversify themselves and reach out to areas where they're not comfortable in and have that project. Every class will have a grade for an SAE, and whether it's a freshman coming in doing their first SAE or a senior coming in, they'll still be required to do one. And having a model where it doesn't matter what stage you're coming into the game, I think is really important. FFA, so a fun fact that I didn't include in my story, so I did not do FFA in high school. I did not do ag ed, I don't have that background, and this is all still new to me, but at the same time, from my experiences at Penn State, I've learned so much about it where it's not new anymore. I think that's really cool. So I've learned that FFA is so important in a classroom because it builds professional development, and it shows kids, it teaches them life skills that they can take the first day they leave high school and until they're retiring. They learn skills that are so important in that program, and those skills can be used anywhere. So having that, and then learning how to support the community in your FFA chapter, because community support, I mean, your FFA program is its own community, but connecting it to your actual local community and having that support, I think is so key. And FFA is such a great tool to use that and do that with. So in AE 413, we had to create a program recruitment video. And so my group, we decided to do a video on how do we recruit stakeholders and how you go about doing that. So what we did was we went and interviewed different students. We asked them three main questions: what their background is, why they should support FFA, and how has FFA influenced them to take the next step after high school. And so we interviewed current students from some of our cooperating centers. I was partners with Mary and Caitlin. And then we also interviewed some people that are outside of high school and got their intake. So we're going to watch a quick video clip of that. That's as loud as it'll go.
maybe some things they wouldn't get to see firsthand, and opens their eyes to different possibilities for maybe occupations of careers in agriculture.
Support of the bank because it gives the opportunity to go on to nursing and out of the agricultural industry that they don't even know that they need. And they provide so many different opportunities, workshops and events and
So that was a really cool project because we got to take current students and get their interpretation of what FA looks at them, how it looks to them, and then we got to look at like previous alumni, and we got to look at students that are in this program and get that whole big picture of why FA is so important. And that's a video that you can show to stakeholders and get them to contribute to your program and support it in your local community. And that was a really fun project. So another thing that we had to do this semester was we had to do a $15 ad mech project. So my original plan was to do a wood duck box. Well, actually, yeah, it was a wood duck box. And instead of, being prepared and looking at how much it would actually cost, I just planned on going to Lowe's and buying the lumber and whatnot. And whenever I got to Lowe's to buy that lumber, I had it, I went to buy it, and I found out it was $37 for that piece of lumber, so we went and quickly Googled, and Bluebird bots is what came out as a result of that. So, Bluebird bots. So it only costs $7, and the idea is that you can take this project and take it in your classroom and have students create a project, every student in your class create a project. So what we're gonna do is, in my Ag 2 class, we have a woodshop unit. So all the kids are gonna create a bird box, and then we're going to tie it in with a community event that we're going to be partnered with Ducks Unlimited. I'll get to that in a second. And then we're going to teach the community how you can support wildlife in your backyard and make that connection. And it's going to be really cool and fun. One of the coolest things that we're going to be doing this year is, in my wildlife class, I met some people from ICEV, and for those of you who don't know what that is, ICEV is online curriculum, and I made connections through that, and they have offered me 60 free student passes. So we're going to do the new program they just launched, which is a Ducks Unlimited certificate. So the program is all developed through Ducks Unlimited, and students will receive a certificate of Ecology Conservation and Management certificate, and that certificate will be really cool. It's going to teach them how the importance of wetlands, the importance of wildlife ID, management, all kinds of cool things. And I'm super excited to work with ICEV through that because the program is designed for 10 weeks. But through talking to people, they're going to help me build in the 5 weeks. And through building that, he told me that I'll be the only student teacher in the country doing this. So I can't wait to see how that looks and make that connection. And through that, we're going to team up with the Ducks Unlimited chapter at Pine Matunian and have a community event. So we're making that whole big connection of all these different projects, and I'm super excited for that. So back to kind of my story. So when I started at Penn State, I was in wildlife, and I received my associate in science in wildlife technology from Penn State Du Bois, and that was an incredible opportunity. I learned a ton about wildlife research and just the whole scientific research background. And I just completed a minor of science in forest ecosystems management. And taking those 2 degrees, I think it is really cool to bring that into the ag ed classroom. As like I mentioned earlier, I don't think we bring enough environmental science into the classroom. And having that background, I was able to not only bring that to my cohort and support that this year, but also bring it into the classroom this spring and then my future actual classroom. And some of those key courses I've taken through that. So one of my favorite courses ever is Wildlife 208. and that was terrestrial wildlife management, and that was so cool because we went to, in Du Bois was the class, we went to a supporter of our program, and we learned the landowner, talked to him, learned about what his management ideas are and what he wants to do, what his ultimate goal is for his land, and then we all drew random wildlife species out of a hat, and then we were given 4 hours to walk around the property and design a wildlife management plan. And that was so much fun, and it was really cool, and you know, getting real world experience, and that was just one of the cool opportunities from Penn State that I really enjoyed. Another class I enjoyed was Forestry 204, which was, I took that in the spring of this past semester, which was kind of like a Western dendrology, so learn about some of those Western tree species. I thought it was very interesting, a lot of fun. And I put AE 311 in because when I decided to switch to ag ed, my intentions were to go into extension and do environmental education, and 311 taught me what really ag ed is and what it means to be an agriculture education teacher. And through learning what that is, I fell in love with it. And that is by far one of the key classes that I took because it got me to where I am today and helped me to ask those questions and learn more about what it means to be an ag teacher and agricultural educator. Some of the certificates I've received through that, this semester we all received the National Safe Tractor Driving Certificate, and we can implement that into our classrooms. But I've also received certificates of Project Wild and Project Wet, the educator certificates. So those are curriculums that are all based on environmental education, and they're really cool because they give you tasks and information on how you can bring not only environmental education, but tie in other courses, so how to tie in chemistry, history, like all kinds of other topics into environmental education. And I have those books, and I'm super excited to bring that in to the classroom. So some of my professional development through my years at Penn State, which really the highlights of it have been from this past year. We went to California a week and a half ago, and we were out with agriculture educators from across the country, and we got to meet, interact with them, and interact with professors from other land-grant universities and even other undergraduate students. And it was really cool to make that connection with those students and learn that, you know, some of the challenges that we're having and some of the questions we still have, they're having that same challenge and question too. So it's really cool to see that we all have the same goal and the same mindset from across the country. And that was really cool to make that connection in California. We did things like inquiry-based learning. We did a workshop with our whole senior cohort, went to Harrisburg for a weekend, and we did a solid workshop on what inquiry-based learning is. And it's a different way of thinking, and it's so cool to see that, and I can't wait to bring that into the classroom. And other events like National FFA Convention and Pennsylvania FFA Convention are just other events where interacting with other ag teachers has been a really great opportunity. And through professional development, I've had some fun internships. So one of my favorite internships was this past summer, and I was an intern at the Russell E. Larson Agricultural Research Center here at Penn State, and I was stationed out at the Pasto Agricultural Museum with Rita Grafe, and that was really cool for two reasons. One, because I got to see what agriculture education looks like in an informal setting. So hosting events, hosting elementary, middle school, and even college students, and teaching them about what agricultural research looks like, but outside of a classroom. And that was really cool, and it gave me a lot of skills and a lot of cool stories I can bring into the classroom this spring. And also just being a part of a research farm and learning about all the different research and how massive the industry and field of agriculture is. I've learned a lot of cool things from that and can't wait to bring it to the classroom. Ag Progress Days, it was super cool to go around. I was tasked during my internship one of the last days to go and talk to some of the businesses there and learn about like why they're Ag Progress Days, why are they interested in engaging with Penn State. And through that I made some connections, and one of the connections I made during that from local seeds company, they're going to come into our classroom and he's going to teach to my Ag and the Environment class and talk about what agricultural sustainability looks like and look at their business model and bring that in the classroom and have him as a guest speaker. Volunteer opportunities through the Pennsylvania Game Commission through wildlife. So I've got to go into a bat hibernaculum and look at bats and look at white nose syndrome, and we have done stuff with the elk tagging elk calves and helping with the elk check station. I had a picture of that on my first slide. And other opportunities like that through Penn State Du Bois and the wildlife program has been really cool to bring that, gain that experience and bring that in the classroom. And we were even able to go into a bear den and pull out little like three-week-old cubs out of a bear den. And like opportunities like that, it's so cool to make that connection and bring it to the classroom. And I can't wait for that. I even had an opportunity to go out to Kansas for a week to work on a deer research project with Kansas State University, and that was a lot of fun, and really see how a research project is going on in a different landscape and a different setting. And all of that kind of dives into what my diversity and how I've been building my diversity in different career tasks and different perspectives on things. California was definitely a huge part in attending workshops and learning how you can bring diversity in your classroom. And I also been working with Miss Metric, and we're going to have our students participate in GLAD in February, and we're going to teach some of those lessons through GLAD Junior and bring global agriculture into the classroom. And that's going to be super cool, and I can't wait to see what that looks like and build that more with Miss Metric. And this past spring, we went to DSA. So DSA is Domestic Study Away, and we went to Montana. And that was super cool because we got to see what agriculture education looks like in a different state. And for me, that was big because I'm still new to that agriculture education and seeing what FFA programs and chapters look like. So seeing it across the country was really cool to see things that I would love to do in a program and things I wouldn't do, and just seeing those different programs. So, like we talked about before, I'm student teaching at Conneaut Area Senior High School, also known as TASH. TASH is a really cool program. It's in Crawford County. It's the only ag-ed program in Crawford County besides the Career and Technical Center. TASH has a lot of cool things. So they have your typical classroom, a shop where we can do woodworking, welding, and all kinds of great things in there where it's really spacious. They have a greenhouse. They also have an outdoor classroom that I can't wait to try and utilize that later on the spring whenever it's warmer out. So Conneaut has 148 student members, and it's growing. It's super cool. Like, they have to have, Miss Metric has 2 freshman classes because there's that many kids that want to join FFA and be a part of ag-ed. And it's really cool to be a part of a program where the seniors, there's 10 seniors in the class, but there's 2 freshman classes that have almost 30 kids in each of them. So it's really cool to see how the program's building and how they're working with that. They do a lot of cool events. So they go to Pennsylvania State Convention. They go to National Convention. I was able to go with some of the students to National Convention and experience that with them. They do one of their big events during the year is they do a tractor light up parade. And I wasn't able to attend that because we were in California, but they do that and really connect with the community. And it's really cool to see how they do that, and the Crawford County Fair too. I believe that Miss Metric and I are the perfect team because looking at what Miss Metric's strong points are, being in the shop and welding and animal science and all of that horticulture stuff, which is kind of my weaknesses. Maybe not weaknesses, but points where I don't have experience in. And then some of her weaknesses are the environmental education and environmental stuff, and that's where my strong points are. So I think it's gonna be really cool to work together and build together and teach each other things. And I think that's really the ideal model and what you look at student teacher and a cooperating teacher. So I cannot wait to bring that to the classroom and work on that through this spring, that 15 weeks. So I've been kind of hinting towards it. So the program evaluation, so they have a certified ag teacher. The student interest goes above the teacher's interest. So whatever the students are into, that's what the program does. And that's really cool to see that firsthand and to be able to learn that and implement that into my future program too and have that mindset. They focus a lot on trying to bring student certificates in the classroom too, and always looking for opportunities for that too. And I can't wait to be a part of that and see what that one teacher program looks like. And then in the spring, whenever we have to go and visit one of our other cohort members, to go and visit a cohort member that has 2 teachers and make that connection and see how it's different. And evaluate how the programs are different. So my class schedule, you guys all have a copy of that in that handout. And the two biggest things I want to highlight is I have that wildlife class, so we're going to be doing that Deaths Unlimited certificate, which is going to be really cool. And I can't wait for that. But the other is my ag science class. I'm teaching twice, so period 3 and period 7. So I'm teaching 2 units in that, and that's really cool because that class is actually co-taught with the disabilities teacher because 85 to 95% of the kids in the class have an IEP. And there's members in that, in those classes that are really below a reading level, and being able to co-teach that with that teacher and see how that works is super exciting. I can't wait to learn how to incorporate that into my classroom and support those kids and support just them being interested in agricultural education. So like I spoke about before, so that's Brian Ishman. He's the Regional Vice President of Local Seeds Company, and he's going to come in and talk to our students about agricultural sustainability and biodiversity and how their company is a model in that and how they teach their clients about how they can better do agricultural sustainability. That's going to be super exciting. We're going to have him actually come in first to introduce what agricultural sustainability and ag in the environment looks like, and have him introduce that topic in that unit. Penn State Extension, so it was funny, I met Jenny in California, even though she works at Penn State, but it took me going across the country to meet her. And she's the extension agent that goes around the state and does cool pesticide education, stuff like that. So she's more than willing to come up to Conneaut to teach my students about what pesticide application looks like in that whole process. And then through the Deaths Unlimited, we're going to bring in DCNR and the Dame Commission, anyone we can, to better build that community event and bring those guest speakers into the classroom to help teach that. So one of the really cool things that we're going to do this year that I'm surprised that Britton didn't talk about it. So we're teaming up with Northwestern FFA, and we're going to do a field trip down to tour the Russell E. Larson Agricultural Research Center at the first week of April. So we're going to get a bus. Half the bus is going to be Cash, the other half is going to be Northwestern, and we're going to come down here for a full-day trip, and we're going to tour the research center. So we're going to look at Dr. Crossweller's apple tree research. We're going to look at Dr. Kane's corn root structure. We're going to tour the Pennsylvania Livestock Evaluation Center. High tunnels, look at strawberries and how the woodlot, and just add progress days and really get that whole big picture of what Penn State as a land-grant university is doing for agricultural research. And that's going to be a really fun trip, and I can't wait to show students how big agriculture is and how cool Penn State is because they participate in all that. And we've been working with Rita Grafe and helping to put all that together. It's going to be a lot of fun. So some of my student goals during student teaching is learning how to be that FFA advisor and what it looks like, since I don't have that background. I don't know I understand what's expected of an FFA advisor, but really seeing it firsthand, I can't wait to make that connection and see how Miss Metric does that and how she's building her FFA program and the model of that. Gain more content knowledge on some of the areas where I'm not strong in. Really seeing how to implement that 3-circle model and build on my classroom management skills, because we have to do micro teaching. And I learned that during my micro teaching that I can be teaching a lesson and there can be students making a paper airplane in the back of the classroom and I didn't notice. So building on my classroom management skills is definitely something I'm looking forward to, and seeing how Miss Metric balances home and work life, because I think that's really important for an agriculture education teacher. So something that I chose to do differently than the rest of my cohort members. So in our rubric for this final presentation, it's structured to have this be the starting point of your presentation, and I wanted to switch it and put it at the end because I wanted to share all the experiences I've done and how Penn State has molded me into be an agriculture education teacher, and then bring this in as to who I aspire to be. So you guys can see my infographic in the handout, and I want my future classroom to be accepting of everyone and be a model of what development looks like, and be as an agriculture education teacher, yes, like I'm the teacher, this is a program that I work for, but it's not my program, it's my students' program. And having that, and having the students see that and realize that, it's their program and they can make it with how they want it, and I'm just the facilitator of that. And being a facilitator of lifelong learning, and really just being the stepping stone for students to see how cool agriculture is and how there's so many different steps, and that my program would be the stepping stone to what their passions are, and I can see the future leaders of that industry, and they can be stewards of what they believe and what their passions are. And I aspire to be that person, that building block in their future endeavors. Thank you.
We'll now entertain questions from both the teacher education panel live audience and the online audience. So those of you in the online audience, if you could ask questions in the chat box, Ms. Moore will be able to bring those to us. We can start with our live audience here. What questions do you have for Mr. Witmer?
Yes.
So something that's unique about you is that you really came into this program with no ag education experience and no FFA experience. Sometimes people really struggle with that. So what was something that maybe you struggled with or found really surprising about FFA and ag ed, and how did you overcome that through your journey here?
So the question was for the live audience, how has my development through being a different part of, not coming into ag ed without that background and that FFA experience and seeing how it works. So I think it's been really interesting because I'm almost happy I didn't do it. Like, love FFA, love the development of it, but I'm happy I didn't do it and I came into this because I have a different mindset. And in FFA they teach you so many great things, and you have that mindset and that way of thinking. And there's members in our cohort that were state officers and real strong FFA members since they were freshmen in high school, and I don't have that, so I have that different mindset, and it's been really cool to use that and bounce questions off them, and then they bounce questions off me, and then develop that way. So, yes.
What has been the most challenging thing about education in the classroom for you?
So the question was, what was the most challenging thing for education in the classroom? So being okay with the mindset that I'm not an expert and I don't need to know everything. So knowing that I can learn with my students, and I can straight up admit to my students, like my professors probably saw in my ag mech demo, that I don't know how to weld, but we're going to learn together. And having that mindset of that is really cool, and that is definitely, when I first came into this, I thought I needed to know everything, and then learning that I don't need to, and it's okay not to, has been the biggest hurdle, but now I'm glad I know. Thanks.
Question in the Facebook universe, or the Zoom
From
universe.
Zoom, it's from Laura Metric.
Oh.
She wants to know, what unit are you most nervous about teaching in the spring and why?
Small gas engines, for sure. But like we've talked about, I'm super excited because we're gonna co-teach that. So I know that I'm not gonna be alone, and it's gonna be really cool to build on that together and help, exactly what I just said before, have the students help that might have more experience than us, and then have them help teach and learn together and have that model. So definitely small gas engines.
So when we work in a public school system, we have these things called administrators.
Yep.
And administrators have to approve how we choose to engage in some of our transformational learning opportunities. How would you communicate the value of a field trip like the one you proposed to Russell E. Larson Agricultural Center to administrators?
So the question was, how can I propose this to administrators to get their support that a field trip that's 3 hours away is important and crucial to student development? So I think by pitching to them that we'd be taking seniors and juniors who are starting to look at what they want to do after high school, and show the value in showing them that this is all the cool different avenues that you can go in, and seeing that real world experience from a land grant university and showing them that there's all kinds of different opportunities. So showing them their student development, professional development in that, I think should be enough to get that support from an administrator.
Would they might want any other information?
Other information on like what we're going to do, or other information in...
We're making the strongest argument possible.
Okay.
You have a responsibility to teach a certain curriculum. Is there anything else they may want to know about why you would take a field trip?
So we could show them some of the academic standards and show that these academic standards are being met on this trip, and show them how, like we saw, we're going to learn about apple trees and all this plant science stuff. So pull in plant science standards, we're going to tour the livestock evaluation centers, so pull in some animal science standards. We're going to do a tour from Dr. Smith in the woodlot, so pull in some of those ecology standards and just really make that connection through different academic standards.
Brandon, you spoke a little bit about some of the skills you've developed in the ag-neg realm. I'll ask a similar question I asked to Britton, which is you identified knowledge, skills, and dispositions that you've acquired over the past year in the senior journey. Can you give me a specific skill that's not related to agricultural content, but more teaching and pedagogy and education related? Can you give me a specific skill and education you developed over this past year?
So the question was for our online audience, what is a specific skill that I've developed through this past year that supports my educational development? I think one is definitely confidence. So having confidence in what you're teaching and what you're going into, because I feel like in education, if you're presenting something you're unsure about and you make it like you're displaying body language and you're making comments you're unsure about this, and trying to claim that you do know it, I think students can weed that out and it doesn't have that strong of an impact. So having confidence and believing in what you're teaching and how you're teaching it and having that model, I think has definitely been one.
I have one. This is from Facebook Live. It's from Luke Benzinger, and he said he would like to know how you plan to use your connections with wildlife organizations and state agencies in the classroom.
Okay, so how am I going to make connections through wildlife organizations and agencies? So like I talked about, we're going to have a community event and we're going to have our students help teach the community about what they've learned through that Ducks Unlimited certificate. And through that, they're going to show the community how cool wildlife is in their hometown, because Cache is right in the middle of Tanyat Lake and Pymatuning Lake, so it's all one big wetland watershed area. So there's tons of opportunity to have the students learn about why wetlands are so important, and then go and teach the community about why they should protect wetlands and some cool things, and maybe, like during waterfowl migration, teach them how to ID all those cool ducks that you never see the rest of the time of the year. Make connections like that, I think, has been really exciting to bring that into the classroom. Yes?
What is your ultimate goal for your future?
My ultimate goal for my future. I think my ultimate goal is to continue on for my master's program, continue on and get my master's degree in agricultural education, and then end up in the classroom for a time period and then see what happens from there. So yeah, definitely end up in the classroom at some point, but I would like to go straight on for my master's. Any other questions?
So you've mentioned a couple times about not being able to know everything, which is entirely true, because no teacher knows everything. But what are some of the options you have as a growing professional in ag education to develop the knowledge and skills that you may not be as comfortable with? Take NAAE and PAAE out of the equation. What are some other resources you have?
So the question was, what are some other resources that I have to better build my career and knowledge on some topics I don't necessarily know? And I'm glad you said take NAAE and PAAE out, because I think they're very valuable, but Penn State does also workshops throughout the year on different things. Like there's just so many different things that Penn State does and different workshops that they do. So engaging in those and engaging with some businesses, because there's businesses that also do workshops and do professional development stuff to teach you about, they teach you about their product, but they teach about like the ultimate goal. So engaging in things like Add Progress Days and all kinds of things like that. Lincoln Electric does workshops and teaches you how to best utilize welding in your classroom. So attending things like that and looking for development opportunities.
This will be my last question for you, Brandon, from me.
Okay.
After all is said and done, and we're at the end of 15 weeks, what is the one thing that you hope that Cash students remember or say about Mr. Witmer?
So the question was, what is one thing that my students at Cash will remember and want to say about me as a teacher after my 15 weeks? I hope that the students can see that I support having a growth mindset and that having that learning and that we learn together, and that making that connection of how do we all learn together, work together with that ultimate goal of being lifelong learners, and that I can demonstrate that, but also demonstrate some of those cool points of like leadership and, you know, professional development, and demonstrate all those and pull in that 3-circle model and how it all connects. So that is what I hope that they say and want.
Looks like we have a question from a student.
We do. So this is from one of your students that you're going to have next semester, from Katie, because Miss Metric's class is watching you right now. Katie wants to know if you're nervous to come into a program with a very active FFA chapter because you don't have an FFA background.
So the question is, am I nervous for coming into a program that has a strong FFA program, but I don't have that background? So there is some nervous in that, but also at the same time that I'm excited to see how that works and to see how that whole process works and how connecting classroom and FFA together, but also again bringing in a different mindset and different thought process on what FFA looks like in a school. I'm super excited to see how Miss Metric does that, and then work with her on even building it even more and doing cool things like that. So really looking forward to it.
Another one.
Yeah, another one. They're just loving you right now. So this is from Austin Butlin.
Okay.
And he wants to know, when you had your own classroom, how would you incorporate guest speakers from different wildlife agencies?
So the question is how to incorporate different guest speakers into wildlife agencies. So I think guest speakers are really important in a classroom, because sometimes it can get a little boring and dull if it's just you teaching all the time. And yes, like we are taught to teach different styles, but being able to bring in different speakers and bring in professionals in that field and making that connection, I think is really important. So like we're planning on doing in the spring, I'm really looking forward to bringing in those professionals and making that connection to agriculture and the environment. Yes?
What advice would you give to any underclassmen in this major who might be watching your presentation? Asking for a friend.
Asking for a friend. So what advice I would give to underclassmen is, one, don't procrastinate. Be on top of things, but most importantly, have fun and know your why. So like there's going to be times where it's going to be really hard, and like there's gonna be so much going on that's gonna be overwhelming, but go back to that why you want to be a teacher and why you want to influence students, because using that as motivation can be so beneficial and giving you that motivation to go on and get the work done and see the value in what our professors are having us do.
Any last questions from the audience? I think that's a great place to end it. Please help me in congratulating Mr. Witmer.